Okay, so now what I want to talk about is finding your pricing sweet spot. Now, this can be a huge driver for your sales and should always be tested during and after your launch. Okay. Now, I recently did this, and after I did it on a product I have been selling now for over 5 months, almost 6 months now. So, this is something that you can do during the launch, but also do it after the launch. And then also do it even if you're just having regular sales and you're kind of like content with that. And I'm going to share with you exactly how that looks. All right. But the first thing I want you to understand is when you launch, you want to launch with a price to sell. So you know that you're going to be launching at a lesser price because some people are going to buy off a price versus off of a more expensive item that has less reviews. Now, once you get more reviews, that's when you can start to increase your price and get that price point where you initially, planned for it to be. Because you may in your head say, I want to be able to sell that for $24.95. That's my highest point, and I'm going to be able to get it to that point, but I'm not going to be able to launch at that price. You're going to launch at maybe $15.95, still making a profit, but yet not making as much profit as you will once you get this thing built out and once you get all of the reviews coming in and you start to get it to convert. Okay. But when you launch, you are going to have to lower the price so it's going to sell easier. Okay. Now, post launch, now this could be a week after launch or it could be 6 months after launch. Okay. But you slowly want to raise your price. Okay. You're going to want to test low and test high. Believe it or not, you could test higher pricing and then all of a sudden find out that your sales go up because some people will then buy because it's perceived value that it must be better because it costs more. All right. But that's again, something that we have to test. Okay. And it could be time of year. Time of year could be different. If you know that the busy season for your product is more so in the Christmas months, let's say, or holiday, well, then you might want to start raising that price slowly because you know that it's going to be more in demand. Okay. So these are just things that I want you to understand that don't necessarily have to be done right this second, but the things that you're going to want to do over time. Okay. And that's why I said this is a slow process, but it's things that you need to be thinking about all the time. And then, how can you make your product sell better and sell more? And there's a lot of good reasons for selling more, not just for profit. And I'm going to go through that here real quick. But here's an example. So here's a pricing test example. I started, and I'm going to show you the breakdown of this, but I started my price when I launched my first product at $15.95. Okay. After 60 days, I was able to increase that to where I was charging $19.97. Okay. And then after I was, selling that at $19.97, I started to sell between 50 and 60 units per day. Okay. And that's give or take. Some days were 45 units. Some days were maybe close to 70 units. But then for the most part, 50 to 60 units, I would say probably more on the side of 55 units. But let's just say 50 to 60 units is what it was averaging per day. Okay. And, this is where why I decided to do the test. And I'm going to explain that. Okay. But my sales, and this is test number one, the sales were stuck at 40 to 50. They started to kind of go down a little bit. Okay. And like I said, I was about 50 to 60. I noticed that they were starting to go down. So I started to do a little bit of research and I was finding out that more people were starting to come on the scene here with a similar product. So they were starting to creep in. Okay. Even though I had a better product, even though I had more reviews, it started to cut into the sales. And then this will happen. Okay. So I decided to lower the price and I went aggressively. I said, let me just go back to how it was when I launched. Let's go $15.95 or 97, whatever. And the very first day I had 88 sales. The very next day. Okay. Now this is what I want to point out here. I was able to increase my profit by $57. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but once you see the numbers here in a minute, it will make sense. Okay. But let's just look at this for a second. 88 sales was $503 profit for the day. So I increased by $57 more in my pocket. Okay. The 50 sales a day at $19.97 was $446. So there's the difference there. There's where you see the $57 more profit. Okay. So what are the benefits of doing this? Why would you want to do that if you're going to, you're going to make a little more, but you're selling more product and you're making more, but you got more customers. So isn't that more headaches? Isn't that normally how it works? Well, no, actually, no, it doesn't. Here's the benefits how I see it. Okay. You're going to get more sales, which again Amazon's going to love you for it. They're going to start ranking you and all that stuff, right? You're going to get more reviews because you got more people buying your products. You got more chance of your review count going up and your feedback as well. You're going to then increase the conversions because you've just increased your reviews, right? And you're in turn going to get more sales, okay? So here, let me just show you this here. And I highlighted this in yellow. I tested changing back the price to $19.97 the next day. And my sales went from the 88 to 37 sales per day, okay? Now that was on day one. And I believe that that was because also it was such a shock because of the pricing change that Amazon might have made my ranking not be as good because it was kind of in that transition. Sometimes when you make changes to your listing, it takes a couple days for it to kind of settle back in. And that was the case because then the very next day I kept it at 1997 and it went to 45 sales. So I was starting to get back to my 45 to 55 sales per day. So it does take some time. So if you do these tests, just remember that it can take a couple days for it to kind of get situated. All right. So the results, here are the results if I was to go back to the additional profit. Let's just go back here real quick. Not that one. Let's go here. The additional profit was $57, right? So if we went with that number and we said, okay, the new lower price would have yielded me $15,090 for my monthly sales. That's going as far as like how many sales were being generated for that month. Now the old price, the higher price, the $19.97 price, that would have yielded me $13,380 in profit. So over the course of a month, if these numbers were to stick, and they probably won't be always that high, but if they did, it would be an additional $1,710 per month profit just by lowering the price and getting more sales, okay? And I have more review count and I have a feedback, but here's the thing. There's also a problem with this. If you don't have the inventory to do this, you're gonna run out of inventory. That's not going to be good. So you can only really do this if your sales are slipping and you want to try to boost them or stabilize them, or if you have enough inventory and you want to increase your profit by just, creating, more sales, but less profit, but more sales is going to, allow you to have more profit. So you have to be careful with that. All right. So the big takeaway and the action steps here are test pricing even after you've been selling for a while. Okay. Now, if you have just launched and you're looking to test price, the very first thing is to definitely price it to sell. Okay. Then once you start to see that you're getting consistent sales, I would say along the lines of like 10 to 15 sales per day, then you might want to go ahead and start slowly increasing it by $1. And that's what I actually did. I went from $15.97 to $16.97 to $17.97 and then on up to $19.97. I even went to $21.97 and I was making sales, but it definitely slowed my sales a little bit more. So then I throttled it back to $19.97 and that's where I found the sweet spot up until I started seeing a little bit of a decline. So again, you want to be testing these things, okay? So your new products, price them to sell, but also test higher prices and see if that helps or hurts sales. It may surprise you. The other thing is you want to test for at least 3 days and then evaluate. Don't necessarily, I kind of jumped the gun the first time because I actually got a little nervous because I would have ran out of inventory. But the thing is you usually want to test, especially when you're just starting, you want to give something 3 days at least to test, to evaluate. Now, what I did is I did the test where I lowered it by 4 and then I brought it back to normal. So you can do stuff like that. But usually, general rule of thumb is to test for at least 3 days and then evaluate the results. And that goes for anything. If you're testing images or titles or any of that stuff, and you want to do one test at a time. All right. But here are the action steps for you to just go through and test your pricing. If you're brand new and you just launched, then just make sure that you price it to sell. Okay. Because you want to get sales. All right. So that is going to end this lesson and wrap it up. But you've got some action steps here if you think that you need to either price it to sell or if you have been selling for a little while and you want to go ahead and start to test that pricing. All right, so that's going to wrap this up. I'll see you in the next lesson.